The seed vault method. How Amish gardeners turn $0 into $3,000 per month with heirloom propagation, no farm needed. What I'm about to tell you contradicts everything the gardening industry wants you to believe. These communities don't use catalogs. They don't buy seeds year after year. They don't need land, licensing, or Instagram followers. Yet their propagation networks move thousands of dollars monthly through networks so quiet that people living 3 blocks away have no idea they exist. The mechanism behind this isn't genetic modification or space-age greenhouse technology. It's something your great-great-grandparents would recognize instantly. Stay with me, because I'll show you exactly how the signal works at the end. If you've watched any homesteading content, you know the standard narrative. You need land, a quarter-acre minimum, good soil, sun exposure, drainage. Then you need capital, equipment, seeds, fertilizer, infrastructure. Then comes the learning curve. Then comes the waiting. Conventional agriculture stacks friction on top of friction until most people quit before they start. But there's a separate economy running underneath the visible one. No viral hashtags, no farm aesthetic, no gear reviews or upgrade culture. Just careful record-keeping and networks of buyers who don't advertise. These operate almost entirely on reputation and referral, which is precisely why they've stayed profitable while the Instagram farm model collapses. Before we go further, I need to point something out. The complete guide to understanding how these propagation networks actually operate, the documentation systems, the buyer pipelines, the pricing structures that keep them running. That's available in the description and pinned in the comments. It's where I've compiled every signal and pattern I've found after interviewing growers across 3 states. Not a free resource, but comprehensive enough that you won't waste months figuring this out by trial and error. Now, here's the part that matters most. These gardeners aren't growing food for farmers markets. They aren't selling vegetables to restaurants. They're operating what amounts to a seed and propagation business, but they've engineered it to require almost no visible footprint. The economics work like this. A single packet of quality heirloom seeds costs you somewhere between $2 and $6. That packet produces 50 to 200 seeds depending on the variety. You plant those seeds, they mature. You harvest them at the right time, usually late summer or early fall. You dry them properly. You clean them. You pack them into envelopes, and now a packet that cost you $6 to generate sells for $18 to $30. But that's the surface layer. The real income appears when you understand that people aren't buying single packets. Serious growers and small commercial operations buy in bulk. 50 packets, 100 packets. Some ask for custom collections built around specific growing seasons or regional varieties. A single completed custom order, say, a collection of cold-hardy heirloom tomatoes, peppers, and herbs tailored for Zone 5, generates between $400 and $800. One order. 8 to 10 hours of work preparing, documenting, packaging, and coordinating delivery. Now the part nobody talks about in the mainstream gardening space. These aren't amateur hobbyists selling a few extra seeds from their garden. These are systematized operations, detailed records, succession planting schedules, specific harvesting windows, temperature-controlled storage, breeding records that track genetics across multiple generations. A serious propagator might maintain 300 to 500 seed lines simultaneously, each one tracked, each one documented, each one isolated to prevent cross-pollination. Someone working this system, working carefully, but not frantically, produces revenues between $2,000 and $4,000 monthly. The startup cost for this? Close to nothing. You need seeds, maybe $50 to buy a base collection. You need pots and soil, under $30 for basic supplies. You need somewhere cool and dry to store seeds, a basement corner, a closet, a spare cabinet in an unheated garage. You need light, which can be as simple as a south-facing window or as organized as affordable LED panels running $70 to $150. Most people starting this already own everything they need. What determines success isn't equipment, it's accuracy. A missed harvest date, seeds that rot from humidity, genetic lines that pollinate with neighboring varieties, cross-contamination in storage. These errors destroy the premium pricing instantly. Quality control is relentless. It has to be. One more detail that changes the entire calculation. These operations are genuinely scalable within a residential footprint. Growing food takes space. Growing seeds for food takes almost none. $1,000 per month requires roughly 50 linear feet of shelf space and maybe 2 hours daily of active work. $3,000 monthly? You're looking at perhaps twice that. Not a farm, not a business that requires you to quit your job, invisible from the street, completely legal. Now, before we go deeper into what makes this method actually work financially, I need to flag something critical for you. This isn't just a gardening technique. This is a business model disguised as a hobby, and the people who profit most from it understand the mechanics that others completely miss. That's exactly why I've put together a comprehensive guide that walks through every calculation, every supplier contact, every mistake I've documented from people who tried this and failed. It's available in the description and pinned to the top of the comments. You'll want that reference as we work through the numbers together. Let's talk about what actually sells and why the money flows so consistently in this direction. Most backyard gardeners think in terms of pounds. How many tomatoes? How many pounds of lettuce? Seed operators think in terms of viability rates and germination percentages. A tomato plant produces maybe 50 fruit across a season. A single tomato plant produces thousands of seeds. That multiplication is where the value lives. Here's what the actual buyer looks like. High-end seed companies scout small operators constantly. They're hunting for people who've already proven they can maintain a specific line, maybe heirloom paste tomatoes, maybe a rare squash variety, maybe cold hardy beans nobody else bothers with. A regional nursery might need 3 or 4 reliable seed suppliers. They don't want to source from a corporation 40 states away. They want someone local who can deliver consistent genetics year after year. Those relationships are worth money, real money. Second category, the direct-to-consumer side. Gardeners with very specific preferences. People who grew up eating their grandmother's heirloom beans and now they want to grow the exact same variety. Or a farmer running a CSA box service who needs unusual vegetables that grocery stores don't carry. They search for seed sellers who actually understand what they're asking for. A person selling 27 varieties of beans through Instagram isn't competing on price. They're competing on rarity and authenticity. Premium pricing is automatic. The third stream, frankly, is the one that scales fastest: specialty growers. Microgreens operations, vertical farms, restaurant gardens with a specific vision. These aren't people buying 5 seed packets a year. They're buying in bulk, repeatedly, and they need consistent supply. A microgreens operator might purchase 50 pounds of radish seed annually. At market rates, that's $200 to $500 per customer for one crop type. Now, the operational reality that most people misjudge completely. Seed production has seasonal peaks and valleys. Spring demands volume. You're harvesting, cleaning, drying, packaging. Summer is lighter but stays steady. Fall, depending on your region, might be the second heaviest season. Winter is when you plan, organize inventory, fulfill wholesale orders, and repair equipment. The work isn't evenly distributed across 12 months. It's concentrated. This is why people fail. They expect consistent hourly rates and instead face weeks where they work 12 hours daily, then weeks where the setup almost runs itself. Money accumulation works differently than crop sales. With vegetables, you harvest and sell immediately. With seeds, you harvest, then wait for drying, then clean, then package, then finally sell, and that entire cycle can be months. Cash flow lags behind the actual work. This matters for your bank account. It matters less once you've built inventory, because you're essentially selling last year's harvest to fund next year's. One number that catches people off guard: startup capital. You don't need land, you don't need equipment that costs thousands. But quality seeds start around $2 to $10 per packet wholesale. If you're buying parent plants or purchasing already proven genetics to multiply, your initial stock investment sits somewhere between $500 and $2,000, depending on how many varieties you want to launch. That money recovers within the first 2 to 3 months of sales if you've targeted the right buyers. Most side hustles don't move that fast financially. The final detail everyone underestimates: the documentation requirement. You're tracking genetics. You're recording which plants produced seed, what the growing conditions were, when you harvested, humidity during storage, germination rates. This isn't paranoia. This is what separates premium operators from the people undercutting themselves at farmers markets. A buyer paying real money wants to know the history. They want reproducibility. Sloppy records means sloppy reputation. Sloppy reputation means you become a commodity seller competing on price instead of a specialist commanding margins. Which brings us to the economics at scale. If you're serious about this, if you're actually building a $3,000 monthly operation, you're not doing it with $50 of initial investment. You're doing it with genuine business infrastructure, better drying equipment, proper storage with temperature and humidity control, better packaging materials, A simple online storefront, or at minimum a professional email address. The real money doesn't live in chaos, it lives in systems. A $50 seed operation might pull in $300 a month. A $3,000 operation pulls in $3,000, because every piece of infrastructure removes friction between you and your buyers. Better packaging means people buy again. Temperature control means zero losses to mold or dormancy failure. Professional presentation means you can charge premium prices instead of competing with the guy selling packets at the farmer's market from a cooler. Before we continue, I need to flag something crucial, and this is where most people lose money without realizing it. The scaling mistake. You'll see this pattern everywhere in small-scale farming, and it's almost always fatal to profitability. Growers think bigger automatically means better, so they double their seed production, triple their drying space, expand to 5 varieties instead of 2, and suddenly they're working 60-hour weeks to move inventory that doesn't sell because they've fractured their reputation across too many products. My full guide on this topic, the complete operational playbook, covers exactly where that line sits: when to expand, when to contract, how to read the signals that tell you you're scaling too fast. It's in the description and pinned in the comments. This is the document that separates the people making $3,000 a month from the ones making $300 and burning out. Now, the Amish growers I mentioned at the start, the ones turning nothing into real income, they do something else most modern gardeners skip entirely. They network. Not on Instagram, in person. They attend seed swaps, participate in regional heirloom societies, build relationships with other growers who've been doing this for decades. Why? Because the most profitable seed varieties aren't always the ones you discover alone. They're the ones someone else has been perfecting for 20 years and is willing to sell you the parent stock for. A connection to that single person, one introduction, can shift your entire operation into varieties that sell for double what you're currently moving. The Amish also don't fight their climate. This is subtle but massive. A grower in Oregon doesn't try to commercialize Arizona varieties. A gardener in the South doesn't force cool season crops. They work with what wants to grow where they live. That alignment saves thousands in failed experiments and keeps yield predictable. Predictability is what lets you promise 40 packets to a buyer and actually deliver 40 packets. Broken promises end businesses faster than anything else I've seen. Money-wise, here's where the real ceiling lives. A single gardener working alone with standard equipment maxes out around $4,000 a month. That's with multiple varieties, solid logistics, and consistent buyers. Beyond that, you need either to scale the infrastructure dramatically, which requires capital and brings different regulatory questions, or you need to specialize so deeply in 1 or 2 varieties that you become the person buyers seek out specifically. The second path is usually better for someone running this from a backyard. Become the person with the best heirloom tomato seeds in your region. Not good, not decent, the best. That reputation justifies $15 a packet instead of 4. $15 a packet times 200 packets a month is $3,000 without busting your time budget. The Amish understood this centuries before we invented the word branding. They built reputation through consistency and quality until their name alone moved product. No advertising required, just word of mouth and results. Most people assume this requires years to build. They're wrong. Wrong in an important way. You can establish real reputation in 8 to 12 months if you're intentional. That means selecting varieties carefully, keeping meticulous records from day one, packaging professionally from the first sale, and following up with every single buyer to ask if the seeds performed. 8 to 12 months of genuine relationship building does more than 3 years of casual selling. The final piece, and this matters, is knowing when to keep something versus when to let it go. A variety that produces beautiful seeds but takes 3 months to mature and sells poorly deserves to be dropped. That space belongs to something faster, better selling, more profitable. Heirloom preservation is genuinely important. Business sustainability is equally important. The Amish balance these by keeping 1 or 2 heritage varieties purely for cultural reasons while building their income on the varieties that actually move. That's not selling out. That's being realistic about what pays your bills while keeping the things you love. Now I want to circle back to something I mentioned at the very beginning. Remember, I told you there was a specific revelation about how the Amish method actually works that nobody talks about, something that changes everything about whether you can do this yourself. This is it. The seed vault method doesn't make money because of heirlooms. It doesn't make money because of tradition or scarcity or any romantic notion about preserving lost varieties. It makes money because the Amish discovered something that modern gardeners completely overlook: Propagation is labor arbitrage. You're trading your time in the fall and winter, seasons when your garden sits empty anyway, for income in the spring when demand spikes. You're not competing with industrial seed companies. You're competing with nobody, because nobody else is doing this work at this scale in their neighborhood. The money follows because you've solved a distribution problem the big players can't touch. You're local, you're trusted, your seeds come from plants that grew in soil, just like the soil your customers have. That's not a small thing. That's everything. $3,000 a month from a backyard. No permit applications, no farm license required, no land purchase. Just attention to detail, a willingness to spend October through March watching plants dry and recording what they do, and the understanding that your neighbors will pay for something they can't get anywhere else. The Amish didn't invent this to be revolutionary. They invented it because it worked. It fed families. It built community. It generated income from a resource everyone had, seed-bearing plants, and the knowledge of how to save them properly. What makes this work isn't mystique, it's replicability. You don't need Amish heritage to do this. You need a pen, paper, a shed corner, and the discipline to write down what you observe. Everything else follows from there. The barrier between financial struggle and $3,000 monthly from a residential property isn't some hidden formula. It's the willingness to see what's already growing in front of you and ask a better question. Not, how do I garden, but how do I garden in a way that other people will pay for? That distinction changes everything. Pull in one person from your church, your neighborhood, your family, who knows how to grow things. Show them this method. In 5 years, instead of one income stream, you have 2 people generating income from seed saving. In 10 years, that's 3. You've built a network. You've preserved knowledge that would otherwise be lost to YouTube algorithms and commercial seed catalogs. You've created local resilience. And you've done it without a mortgage on farmland. This is the work. Not complicated, not mysterious, attentive, patient, profitable, because it solves a real problem for real people who live near you and trust you. Start with one variety that grows well in your climate. Save the seeds. Label them clearly. Sell them at a market or through word of mouth. Track what sells. Next year, grow more of that and less of what doesn't move. That's your entire business plan. Everything else is just showing up consistently and doing the work better than anyone else in your neighborhood is willing to do. If you want the complete walkthrough, the exact calendar, the variety recommendations for your climate zone, the pricing strategies that work, the customer acquisition tactics the Amish actually use, all of that is in the detailed guide, link in the description and pinned in the comments. That's where the real specifics live. Thank you for watching all the way through. If this resonates with you, subscribe so you don't miss the next video on backyard income systems that actually work. Hit the like button if the Seed Vault idea sparked something for you, and turn on notifications so you're first to see when we go live. I'll see you next time.